Colossus, the world's first programmable computer, in 1941. I'm looking 1 and 2. Thank you. Construction started in 1938 and was finished just over a year later in 1939. This bunker was used in anger only twice. October the 3rd and 1940. That's the only time Churchill came here. He chaired a meeting of the War Cabinet here. It was used a second time in 1941 when Lord Privy Seal Clement Attlee chaired a meeting of the War Cabinet whilst Churchill was said to be unwell, in the presence of Australian Premier of the day, Robert Menzies, where he gave a 40-minute briefing on the Australian war effort. You will see the room where those two meetings took place later. We'll talk about that further on. In 1942, the decision was taken to construct an additional war headquarters on Martlesham Street in central London, in the site of two old gasometers. The gasometers were removed, the resulting pits, the North and South Rotunda, were created, and the codename Anson was given to the replacement for Paddock, located in the North Rotunda. That facility stayed in use until the end of the Falklands War in 1982. Thank you, guys. I just need a prompt every now and then. In 1982, we were fortunate enough to enter there about 3-4 years ago before it was demolished, and there was still a lot of maps on the wall of the South Atlantic and things like that. The Post Office Research Station continued here for many years, and this bunker had various functions, from store to being the offices for the Post Office Gardening Club. There was a social club down here and everything else, and eventually fell into disuse. During the late 80s, early 90s, this bunker was looked at the replacement for the regional war room for North West London at Partingdale Lane and Mill Hill. That was no good because it was very damp. They came in here and found that this was even worse, so that idea quickly got scrapped. We first entered here in, I think it was April or May 2000, came in to find this place full of debris, junk, rubbish, everything you can think of. And on the lower floor, well, we'll tell you what was on the lower floor a little bit later. You'll find out. Suffice to say, it wasn't pleasant. Any questions on the history of the bunker or anything? Okay, what we're going to show you today is original. There's no restoration down here, hence why all the water's dripping through the ceiling and everything. Every piece of ductwork, every light fitting has been here for heaven knows how many years. There are 2 floors to this bunker, not 26 floors that the sign says. But we hope you do enjoy your tour today, and please feel free at any point to ask any questions.
Was it actually built by the Post Office Research?
No, it's built by the Ministry of Works.
Oh, nice.
Okay. So, what we're going to do, we'll start off with the air handling and air conditioning plant, and that involves a walk down the corridor. So, if you'd like to follow me, we're going this way. Shucks. Excellent. What's your name? Joe. Great. Thanks, Joe. We'll need you later. So, this is a bit better. Right. Here we are underground. If you close the gas-tight doors, the bunker becomes airtight. So how do you breathe? The surface building had air intake vents, and that air was piped into here, and here we have one of the air purification units. This was installed specifically for removing any air contaminants such as mustard gas, and you can still see what's left of the filter in here. This would have been a charcoal, sand and water filter, and the air would have been blasted through here prior to going across the corridor to the air conditioning and air handling room. Turn that off again. Now, you can see all this pipe work and light fittings and everything. It's original, as is this. This was state of the art. It's made by Vokes in Guildford, I think.
Zinc?
Sorry?
Zinc?
Zinc, yes. Zinc and steel. And Vokes is a company that still make air handling equipment today and air scrubbing equipment, primarily for the semiconductor industry, for creating clean rooms in chip factories and things like that. Some original controls here. Looks like it's some form of electrical switchgear or relay switchgear. And you'll see some of the best stalactites in the building here coming down, including what I believe to be the longest one in the corner there. So, very good. Any questions at all on what you're seeing here? No? No questions? Okay, what we're going to do now, I'll lead the way. We're going to go over to the other side and just have a look at some of the So, here we have air ducting coming into this room. Now, we've got a bit of electrical switch here on the wall, but we've got these two great big, what appear to be air conditioning units. We also have this baffle for isolating the air system. There are a couple of these around the building. It just means you could slide that in its day. It doesn't do anything now, it's rusted solid. And that would have isolated the air system for any blast and contaminants. As well as having filtration, you've got physical blocking of the air ducting as well. Now, when we go down the stairs, there are some air ducts on the right-hand side, and those are part of the air handling system for bringing the air in here. Any questions on this at all? Nobody's asked any questions yet? Okay, well this is the point where we're going to need to use the spiral stairs. Okay, so those of you who don't want to use the spiral stairs, if you can see Duncan at the back in the very fetching yellow jacket, give him a wave, Duncan. Duncan will take you down the main stairs. It doesn't affect the tour, you'll still get to see anything. Meanwhile, we'll lead the way, and guys, if you can bring... I hope everybody likes water, it really went down here. I'll be out that door faster than you can possibly imagine. You have to use that wheel and that knob to stop that going past the end, okay? Wind them anti-clockwise. Alright? They're set to full open because we need to start up. Don't let that come off the end of the scale because things are going to go bang. And I'll get very cross. Right, we want any more to come in? Is that everybody? Above us there's 3 foot of reinforced concrete, then the upper floor. Above that there's 5 foot of reinforced concrete, and then about 37,000 tonnes of earth, sand and gravel. Above that there would have been a surface building, a single-storey surface building, which is no longer there, it's gone, which contained the air intakes and we're pretty certain also contained the main fuel tank. There is a header tank here, it's black oil drum, to supply diesel for the generator. Now this is the original generator that was put in 1939 as far as we're aware. It hasn't done that many hours, but Joe's now going to help me start it up, aren't you, Joe? Right, now there's a switch here now, on and off. Sorry guys, fingers in the ears please, because this gets noisy. I won't run it for very long. So, 3, it will make a bit of a bang when it starts, but don't worry about that. So, 3, 2, 1. Well, as that hasn't run for 40 years, I don't see how it's going to run today anyway, so don't worry about that. Thanks, Joe. I need to get later. So this is the control unit which would have controlled the generator, and obviously the exhaust pipe covered in asbestos and lots more stalactites. Now, behind you there are 2 more air conditioning units and a whole rack of switchgear as well for the electrics. So if the mains power had failed, the generator could have been switched off and the bunker could have continued to function without any problems. Okay, so this was powerful enough to run the whole thing. A generator with this power out these days would probably be about an eighth of the size or something. But it is original, like, well, we believe it's original, like everything else that we're showing you today. So, some of the electrics are original as well. This silver box isn't, this was put in later, that's a later design, but it's still using the traditional mineral insulated cable. Any questions at all? I'm not getting many questions on this at all. It's worrying. Yeah, okay. Well, now what we're going to do is we're going to go out into the corridor now and we'll turn left. We're going to go about halfway along the corridor and we're going to come to the back room. And this is one of the 2
Bone dry. Right. Absolutely bone dry.
Well, it's changed a bit now. Yeah, there's some real fungus and mold problems. Watch your foot in here, it's a bit slippery. I hope so. That'll look when we get back.
It's pretty muddy in there.
This is one of the 2 most important rooms in this bunker. Not only does this also have some fabulous stalactites, but this had one of the greatest functions during the bunker if it come into use. We have 3 rooms, all separate. One for the Army, one for the Admiralty, one for the Air Force. That's so their own staff could work in these rooms. They had a window to look into here to see what's happening, and they could work without disturbing the other armed forces. In the middle here was a table with a huge map on it. Around that table would have stood RAFs and Wrens with their headsets, which the cables ran in the floor trench, which is disintegrating rapidly in places I wouldn't recommend standing on. Now, you asked the question, where has all this muck come from? Well, believe it or not, I'll now show you how deep the water was when we came in here. If I just shine that on the wall over there, there's the top of the tide mark. It was knee deep.
About 18 inches up.
Oh, right.
Now, when we came in here in April, may have been June 2000, we explored the upper floor, covered in debris, and we came down the emergency steps you'd come down to be greeted with, and remember we're doing this in pitch black, there was no lighting in here, so we're working by our torches only, to be greeted with water on one of the steps, which we splashed in and said, it's wet. Probed it out with a stick, and the stick wasn't long enough when we got to the bottom of the steps, and there was 18 inches of water down here. We had no option but to continue on. Some people took their shoes and socks off, others put on waders. And we came in to look around and actually see what was down here. And we were the first people who'd been in on this level for a very, very long time indeed. We didn't know what we'd find down here. It could have been dead bodies. There was a lot of junk down here, a lot of old bits of office furniture left over from the post office, which aren't particularly relevant to the story, and a lot's been removed. But this room, of course, is very relevant to the story of Paddock. It had the maps in it. We know this. Look at these light shades, specially designed to throw light onto the wall. So we started in the far corner with Scandinavia, walking across the North Sea, down onto the northeast European coast, across Belgium, Holland, Germany, Luxembourg, France, and out into the Atlantic. The whole thing as one huge, specially made, continuous map. Secondary map on the table in the middle here. It really must have been quite something. It's a deep shame that the map isn't here. I can't show you it. I really, really wish it was. But hey, it's gone, and it won't be coming back, that's for sure. The stalactites here leaching through the concrete. We've got some quite nice ones here. We're getting quite long these days. These have probably taken about 20 years to grow to that length, I'd imagine. Each time we come along, they get a little bit longer. Please don't touch them, because if you touch it, it'll break. If it breaks, it's not there for the person on the next tour to have a look at. Take only photographs, leave only footprints. So, any questions at all here?
Were there any parts of the map left when you came down originally?
Nothing at all.
Nothing at all. Table was gone, everything.
Yeah. Now, where's the gentleman who used to work here? Oh, there you are. Right. When you were here, do you remember anything of the maps or tables down here?
No, it had been cleared by then. I only came in this room once or twice, if that often. And it was largely, as you say, just a storeroom with stuff here.
Yeah, it's a shame. Really.
Well, you imagine if that map was on the wall today, even if it was all damp and horrible, what something that would be.
Oh, exactly,
Yeah, quite.
Yeah. But the, as I said about the construction of the purpose-built headquarters in the rotundas at Martlesham Street, when that happened in 43, 44, a lot of the furniture from here was moved down there. Okay, that is when this was put on care and maintenance. Now what we'll do, back out into the corridor please, left turn all the way down to the end, and we'll go to the war cabinet room, which is where I need Joe again. On the 3rd, 1940, it's Sir Winston Churchill chaired the meeting of the War Cabinet. We know this, the minutes of that meeting are listed in the Public Record Office. It also tells us a lot about the meeting. It tells us that Churchill sat on the opposite side of the room to the door, but facing it, smack in the middle of the table. Just where you are, Joe. Thank you. Sorry, don't get so nervous now, that was it. And the members of the War Cabinet would have sat round this beautiful oak table that was down here, and a nice leather chair, probably with carpet on the floor as well. There's also acoustical treatment in this room. You notice it actually sounds differently, so that you couldn't be heard outside so much. This panelling is actually acoustical, right? On the ceiling, we have this wonderful mould growth everywhere. When we first built tours in here, it was only as far as this light fitting. It's now all the way to the far wall virtually. And again, more light fittings for throwing right onto the walls where there would have been some maps and things. Overhead lights for the main table. The desks here on the right and the coat hooks, they're a later addition, they're not original. They probably came in sometime around the time of the post office use of the site. So, October 3rd, 1940, Churchill chairs the meeting in here. In 1941, this is the room where Sir Clement Attlee chaired the meeting, where the Australian Premier, Robert Menzies, was present at that particular briefing on the Australian war effort. Just outside this room, to the left, there is a very small BBC studio. That would have been a transmission facility for Churchill or whoever to address the nation if required. And there's still some acoustical treatment in there and things, and you can just have a look in the doorway as we move out from there. Please don't enter that room because there's stuff dropping off the ceiling and all the rest of it. The floor's very slippery and uneven. Any questions at all?
Why was the room used on the day you mentioned?
Sorry?
Why was the room used, that particular... Why was this building used for that meeting at that time?
Okay. In October 3rd, 1940, the need was to dry run this facility to test that it actually did work and could function. So the decision was taken to hold the War Cabinet meeting here. Churchill didn't want to come here. He hated it here. He only ever came here once. Far from the light of day, most dismal place. He found it very damp. He also felt that by not being in central London, he was actually running chicken from Nazi Germany. And Churchill liked to be down in the thick of it as well. If you go to the other cabinet war rooms, the one that's all beautifully restored and opened as a museum in Storey's Gate, that will give you the other half of the story there. That was built beneath the steel framed building, which at the time was considered to be the safest building in central London.
Are there any photographs of this vessel when it was in use?
If there is, we haven't seen them. There are some photographs at the Imperial War Museum and things, but as for photographs of the inside, that's what we'd really like. Whether they actually exist or not somewhere in a drawer covered in dust, I don't know. This place was on the secret list, on the secret list.
Even when I was here in early 60s, late 60s, taking photographs on the site was definitely discouraged. Long after the war was over, obviously. But yeah, the cameras were not liked on site at all.
Yeah. And of course it was on this site in the Post Office Research Station where Tommy Flowers developed Colossus, the world's first programmable computer that was later used up at Bletchley Park to crack the German Enigma codes. Has anybody ever been to Bletchley Park?
Yes.
You have? Good. It's a good day out, isn't it? Yeah, really. If you've not been, really recommend. You see the replica of Colossus?
No.
You saw it, yeah. They've actually rebuilt replica of Colossus, and when they, on the day they launched it all, having rebuilt it with bits of drawing that post office engineers do tend to retain here and there, they actually had Tommy Flowers there in his wheelchair, and along with the Duke of Kent, looking at it, and it was quite a day apparently. I've been up there. It's well worth it if you've never been. Have a look around. Any more questions?
Was this place regularly used or very casually?
No, it was on permanent care and maintenance until about 1943. But it was only used 2 times in anger. There was probably a staff of half a dozen here. Somebody on the switchboard, a couple of soldiers to guard it, and caretakers. That's probably all there were here when it was not in use. It wasn't regularly manned. because everybody was using the main cabinet war rooms on Storey's Gate. No more questions?
Why does the mould go to this particular room? Is it the sound insulation or something?
It could be, the sound insulation.
It's not growing on the side though, is it?
No, we think it may be something to do with humidity. It's perfectly safe, but please don't eat any of it. We won't do our liability insurance payments any good at all. No, I'm afraid that's a question I can't answer. I just simply don't know.
Are there any plans, to do any more to conserve this place, or what, or leave it to rot away like this?
It will be left to rot away. You cannot restore this. There's nothing to restore it to. There's nothing to restore it with. You'd have to stop the water coming in. The membrane was pierced. It was always damp. The membrane was pierced when the houses were built on top. The ground was disturbed. The water pours in here. On a bad day, you'll get a couple of gallons an hour coming in down here. You're never going to stop it. It would be hopeless to try, and it costs too much money. And somebody at the end of the day has got to fork out the money to do that.
Yeah.
We have a health and safety certificate here. We have liability insurance. Therefore, we can run tours. We've been doing tours here for at least 4 years, probably. Go on, 4 years?
Yeah,
Is it 5?
5 years.
It's 4 or 5 years we've been doing tours here. That will continue for the foreseeable future, as long as people like ourselves are able to come and run the tours. Subterranea Britannica are retained by Network Housing Group as volunteers to actually run the tours here, and they entrust. We're a group of underground explorers and cavers and mine explorers.
How many tours do you run?
Sorry?
How many tours do you run?
On a busy day, we will do the first tour at 9:30. There's a tour of 25 people every 30 minutes until 5:30. That's maximum capacity. We're limited. We can only have 50 guests in the bunker at any point in time. That's it. All right. So what we'll do, we're going to go up to the next floor because time is the metal frame for me. So, through the door on the left, please wait on the metal frame. In the door on the left for me, please. So, do you want to do surveying down here? Door on the left, please. Yeah, I'll be through in a 60
If they had come in and there had been
Door on the left, please. And then door on the left. Straight around and door on the left, please. About to tell me what this is.
MDF, main distribution frame.
A main you've been looking at the back, haven't you? I can see you're going to be trouble, aren't you? Yeah. Don't worry. No, you'll need to be at the back for the next one, so I want you in the first on the next room. Right, this is indeed the main distribution frame for the telephone system. This is the original frame itself. Now, if you'd like to split into 2 groups and come around the side, I'll talk you through what we have concealed here within these steel covers. 54 pairs to main distribution frame sub-basement, 100 pairs to main distribution frame sub-basement. ZDOTR, I wonder what that is. When our friend who used to work here comes up in engineering, I'll pick his brains. But this is an original thing. Now, throughout this room, there are a number of racks and dolly peg switchboards that were done. You can tell that by the markings on the floor, and the racks and dolly boards went horizontally across the room. Now, if we walk down the room, excuse me, I'm starting to squeezy through. Thanks. We have a suspended ceiling, which probably came here in the 60s or whatever. This room was used for store, it was used as a sports and social club. And it had the most important sanctuarisation of the day. I don't know if they've got the same prices, but we've got a gin and tonic in there. Yes, we've got Gordon's. Got Gordon's, top man, that's what we like. So, this would have had all the telephone operators in it, running the switchboard, but it's a room that's done other things as well. Now, what's missing? There's 2 things that are missing here.
lights.
No, within the bunker. What happens? Kitchen and loos. We have a kitchen, you're correct about the loos. There are no toilets in this bunker, they were in the surface building. Oops, great design fault. Okay, so in the event of there being a raid and you having to put the bunker into lockdown mode, which is when you need it. Yeah, which is when you need it. The sanitation would have been a fire bucket, or maybe they'd have brought down some Elson chemical toilets or something like that. The other thing that's missing, of course, is beds. Where does everybody sleep? Well, what happened was that the government commandeered Neville's Court at the end of Brook Road, and that was converted into accommodation for some of the key ministers, and 2 of the flats were actually knocked into one to form one super huge flat for the use of Winston himself. Any questions at this stage? Okay, it's competition time. I do hope you've all been paying attention. We're going through the door on the right. I'd like you all to walk down to the far end of the room, please. And I'll be asking a very unusual room, with a lamp in the middle, tiles on the floor, different type of light fitting, and no air conditioning. This is different, isn't it? So, what's the function of this room?
It's a 50-volt battery room with and maybe switching complex.
I'm going to throw you off the tour in a minute. You're absolutely correct. That's exactly what it is. It's a battery room. Have you been on this tour before?
No, sir. But on applications of it.
Well that explains it then, doesn't it? Right. Yeah. Okay, I was waiting for the mortuary or kitchen to come out like it normally does. No,
Very nasty with no ventilation.
yes, no ventilation. Well, there's one tiny vent up on the wall there, which is now blocked. Okay, now the reason this wasn't the air conditioning, is that not one there? I've not noticed that. Oh yeah, there's a vent there as well.
Yeah.
The reason, I hadn't noticed that before.
Yeah, but it's the only one which is dry.
Well, the only room that's dry.
Yeah.
Yes. No, there would have been,
Probably bus bars.
is it? Oh no, I've not seen that one before.
It's all right.
Bus bars.
Yeah, it could have been.
And batteries.
Yeah. Well, there would have been steel racking along the walls and huge lead acid accumulators. If the power had failed and the generator had failed, or before the generator could have been started, the batteries in here would have taken over and powered the bunker. Estimation on time? I reckon about a day and a half off the batteries.
It used about 24 hours.
24 hours.
In quotes.
Yeah. Depending on how charged they were and how good the batteries were. So, yeah. Top marks, I've got something for you up there.
Is that why you're designed him so far? To keep the batteries dry?
I know, the water has just come in all over the bunker over the course of time.
But
So-
not here.
No, this is dry. There are other rooms on this floor that are dry as well. Yeah. So, the batteries were charged, they were sort of feeding from the mains. That would have kept them topped up. I imagine they're not charged of some sort. So what we're going to do, we're going to go out on the left, so we're going to go through the bar, okay, no nicking the pork scratchings. We'll go into the corridor, please, and turn right. The kitchen. Now we have a little hatch for the servery into the corridor, and even the vent for the old stove that would have been here at some point. We also have some marvellous stalactites, particularly at the far end. If you look at that wall, you've got some that have gone from ceiling to shelf and joined up, and a couple of nice straws forming behind me. This kitchen was never designed to do full-blown gourmet meals. It was really for a sandwich and a cup of tea, a snack, that was it. There was a big canteen on site with the post office, and the staff here would have used that. We've got a couple of butler sinks behind. The water's been gone long ago. And you see it's all looking rather neglected. So what are the future for this bunker? Well, this bunker's 66 years old this year. Past its pensionable age, and very well deserved of it in terms of its service to the British, even though it was only ever used twice. We run tours here twice a year, once in the spring, which is today, and again at London Open House, which I think is end of August, start of September this year. And again, we're only here on the Saturday on that day though. But if you'd like to come back, or you'd like to bring some friends along, you'd be very welcome. Keep an eye on the Stadium Housing website for the booking detail, and drop Katie an email or give her a ring to secure your place. That's really it for today. That is the end of the tour. If anybody is interested in Subterranea Britannica, we have some leaflets upstairs, and membership is open at £15 a year. Thank you. Yes. We also have a day conference on Saturday at Imperial College in London. If anybody would like to come along to that, we still have a few places left. That's £18. We do have a variety of speakers throughout the day, starting at 10 a.m. We have another tour waiting to come in, so if you don't mind, I'll do questions on the surface. When you're going up the stairs, can I please ask you, keep your hard hats on until you are outside the bunker. Remember to hold the handrail, remember to duck as you go through the final door as well. And if we could just show our appreciation, please, for the safety team who've been following us around today. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you for coming to Paddock Road.